Welcome to another video, and in this video I'm going to talk about my experience at the Australian Formula One Grand Prix on the Thursday. So I've been many years to the Grand Prix and I will be going on Sunday, but I thought I'd just give some views on what I saw on the Thursday. So firstly, there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people there. Certainly not overwhelming, but given that it was a Thursday, I was just really, really surprised at just how many people there were, and it's going to be crazy to see over the weekend. So the Australian Grand Prix last year had 480,000 people, and I think that's the second most behind Silverstone. I don't think they'll break the record this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they hit 500,000. So yeah, it's just incredible how popular it is now and just how difficult it is to get tickets. Now, speaking of which, what day would I recommend going to the Grand Prix? The obvious answer is Sunday, right? Because that's the day that the race is. But my recommendation is to go either on Friday or Saturday, because on Friday and Saturday you get 2 hours of track action because you get free practice 1 and free practice 2. And on Saturday you get free practice 3 and qualifying. So both of those are 2 hours. And you also see the cars kind of come through one at a time. And it's a lot easier to follow. You can say, oh, okay, Lewis is doing, his lap, and Norris is doing his lap, and Piastri is doing his lap. And, you can kind of soak it in more and enjoy it more. Whereas when you see the race, you just see everybody just zoom past, and then you kind of have to wait a minute and a half or 2 minutes for them to come around again. And it's also very hard to follow the race. They have screens and they have the sort of radio commentary blaring as well. But yeah, I think you can just kind of soak it in more. There's less people, although there's still a lot of people. But certainly back in the day, and if you went on Friday, there's barely anybody. So that's why I was quite surprised to see so many people on the Thursday, because there's no F1 action on Thursday. So yeah, that's just something to to think about and consider. Also, if you go Friday or Saturday, you can let your hair down a little bit more, go out for a drink, go out with your friends. You don't have to worry about work the next day. And also the prices. So in 2026, the prices were 210 on the Sunday for a general admission. Saturday was 160, Friday was 90, and Thursday was $45. The other advantage with going on certainly the Thursday, I think Friday they don't let you do this, but you can actually go into the grandstands even with a general admission ticket. So if you've never been to Albert Park or you've never been to a Formula One weekend, it's a fantastic opportunity to walk around the track, see different viewpoints, kind of understand the speeds. Sometimes, I remember going to Suzuka, and Suzuka is actually a lot more undulating. It's a lot more hilly than it looks on TV, and I was really quite surprised by that. And there's just some fantastic views of the track where you can see 3, 4, 5, 6 corners from one vantage point, which unfortunately you don't get at Albert Park because it's practically virtually flat. But yeah, so I honestly, I would recommend go on the Friday or the Saturday as my top. Probably Saturday, you get a good mix of, a lot of great atmosphere. You get qualifying. I remember going last year on the Saturday, so Lewis Hamilton's first qualifying, so his first kind of official session in a Ferrari. And yeah, but so yeah, if you want the experience, you want to experience kind of the track and the viewpoints and things, I think go on the Friday or the Saturday. But otherwise, go on the Sunday, obviously see the race. Thursday, there's no Formula Ones on track. So yeah, but on the Thursday, I actually went quite late in the day. I went around 5 o'clock and I saw the V8s, and then just walked around for a couple of hours, saw what was there. They have a lot of exhibition cars, and met some of the V8 drivers, and yeah, just kind of soaked it all in. I hummed and hard whether I was going to go, but it was a nice sort of chill evening. But yeah, it would have been a long day, I think, otherwise, because I looked at the schedule and there really wasn't much happening. There was the Porsche Carrera Cup at around 3-ish, 3:30. But yeah, usually Thursdays are more for like media, and that's all behind closed doors. So I don't think it's a fantastic fan experience from that perspective. But I think a lot of people had the same idea as me because there was a big line to get into the gates when I went. One thing that was surprising to me is so actually this is good timing. So they have the main stage here, and they'll have the drivers come on for 10 minutes, and they actually had so they've spread it over the whole weekend this year, and they only go on stage once over the whole weekend for 10 minutes. And McLaren were on Thursday, and they were also at something like 6:30, which the last racing was at 5. I think the V8s finished at 5:40. So it was almost as if they planned it when there'd be as less people as they could get, and that was just really surprising why they didn't save them for the Sunday. And the other thing is, they do often throw out caps, and they don't even sign it, which is something I find very strange. But I remember a couple of years ago, Lewis actually, they were sitting down, and Lewis actually said, "No, let's stand up so people towards the back can at least see us." And I thought that was an incredible sign of humility from Lewis. But yeah, check the times if you want to check the drivers on the main stage for that. There was a Lego booth there. I also saw a Hot Wheels booth, which wasn't there last year. So a little tip, if you are going to buy the Lego F1 cars, don't buy them at the track. Don't buy them from Lego. They always charge full retail price. You can always get them for around 20% cheaper from other retailers. And they did actually have a sort of booth experience. And that's where I got this lanyard from. And you can also get your passport stamped. So I don't think they were actually giving these out at the track. Maybe they were. I already had one because I've got it stamped at a few places around the world. But yeah, you can actually get it stamped there. So if you're a huge Lego fan, that's something that you can do. The V8s definitely worth checking out. V8s are much more chill. You can get right up to the drivers. I was really blown away just how down to earth they were. I met Chaz Mostert, who won the V8 championship last year. So V8s are the premier racing class in Australia and New Zealand, and they were just more than happy to stop, sign autographs, get photos. They really made you feel very special. Actually, I was really touched by that. The merchandise, I had a quick look at the merchandise. Merchandise is always very, very pricey there. It's way overpriced for what it is. But I did see, I actually showed in one of my videos that they actually look quite affordable. So I kind of used the hat as an index because, the hats were, last year they were about $90, and I expected them to be about $100 this year with inflation and all that. And then I saw the hats for $50, $40, $50. I'm like, what's going on? And then as I was walking away, this lady said, "Oh, do you have Racing Bulls?" And the staff said, "No, we don't." And she's sort of angry, like, "Why don't you have Racing Bulls?" And then he said, "Oh, this is last year's merchandise." So then I was like, that's why it was so much cheaper. It was still pretty expensive, like $50 for a hat, $150 for a t-shirt, for stuff that's out of date. I mean, not that you'd really know it was out of date because they usually just change the sponsors. But what surprised me is they didn't disclose it. There was no signage that said, "Hey, this is, last year's merchandise." So, yeah, be aware of that. I actually think it's a good deal to get the cheaper one, but, some people might say, "Hey, if I'm going to spend $50 on a hat, I may as well spend another $40 to get the most recent one, even though it's going to be out of date next year." And then the last thing was I had a really interesting experience, actually. So I met an influencer. Now, I'm probably like most of you guys, I roll my eyes at influencers because, everyone seems like they're an influencer these days. But I actually saw this very attractive woman. I noticed her actually outside the track. And, I thought, well, I'm not going to approach her because, it's a bit creepy. And then maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I actually saw her in the track. And so I started talking to her. and she was really nice, very down to earth, and not arrogant at all. And anyway, I got talking to her, and she was there with Ford. So Ford had asked her to come along, and it was her first Grand Prix weekend, and she actually got to meet Daniel Ricciardo and go racing with him in a Ford vehicle that they actually had at the track. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. I've probably watched literally 400 plus races over the years, and I've never had the opportunity to meet an F1 driver. So, good on you. If you got a cute face and a social media presence, then the sky's the limit. But yeah, she was very nice, and I looked her up afterwards because and she didn't even like tell me, but I asked her, I'm like, oh, so what's your handle or whatever, and she had over 3.5 million followers. So I was like, wow, that's actually really impressive. So, but that was the Thursday at the Australian Formula One Grand Prix. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the event, if you've been along or if you've been to other weekends around the world, and check out my other content on F1.